Whatever happened to Mr. Guitar Chet Atkins? With his unique guitar-picking style, Chet Atkins produced music from country to jazz in a career spanning over 50 years, making him the most recorded solo instrumentalist in country music history. His talent for finding and nurturing new recording stars and introducing new sounds earned him a second career as a record company producer and executive. Atkins has also received numerous awards for his talent, including several Grammy Awards and nominations, and was for many consecutive years named top guitarist by Cashbox magazine. Chet Atkins was born Chester Burton Atkins on a farm near Luttrell, Tennessee, a small town about 20 miles north of Knoxville, on June 20, 1924. His parents, James Arley Atkins and Ida Sharp Atkins, each had children from a previous marriage. The family was large and poor. With a father who was a music teacher, piano tuner, and evangelist singer, a mother who played piano and sang, and siblings who played instruments, Atkins was surrounded by music from birth. At the age of 6, he played his first instrument, a ukulele, replacing broken strings with wire pulled from a screen door. 3 years later, he began playing a Sears Silvertone guitar and a fiddle, along with his siblings and their stepfather, Willie Stravell. He and a brother played at local gatherings, throwing a hat on the ground into which listeners were encouraged to toss spare change. They were quite successful with this during the Depression years of the 1930s. Atkins idolized his talented half-brother Jim, who was 13 years older. Jim Atkins was a guitar player on network radio and later performed with guitarist Les Paul. The younger, budding musician was influenced by what he heard on radio and records, including the songs of country music pioneer Jimmie Rodgers. However, despite the music and large family, Atkins had a difficult childhood. He was extremely shy and an asthmatic child. Music became a way for him to express himself in those early years. James and Ida Atkins divorced in 1932. In hopes that a different climate would improve Atkins's asthma, he was sent to live with his father in Columbus, Georgia, in 1936. Atkins's move to Georgia widened his musical sphere, bringing him radio programs from Knoxville and Atlanta, Cincinnati, and New York City. As a boy, he listened to guitarists on a crystal radio set he had assembled by himself and tried to imitate them. Cincinnati's station WLW is where he first heard and tried to copy Merle Travis playing guitar. In doing so, Atkins developed his own style. Because he could not observe Travis, only listen to him on the radio, Atkins couldn't see that Travis played the guitar with his thumb and just one finger. His admiration for his hero never waned. Atkins named his daughter Merle. This signature thumb and finger guitar-picking style Atkins created not only influenced future musicians, but led Atkins to design guitar models, collaborating with the Gretsch Guitar Company and later with Gibson. While still in school, Atkins began performing on radio stations. At the age of 17, he quit high school to enter the music field. Atkins returned to Tennessee and landed his first job at a radio station, WNOX, in Knoxville, fiddling for the duo of R.G. Campbell and Bill Carlisle. He later played on the Daily Barn Dance Show. Atkins was also moonlighting as a jazz guitarist. Though management and other artists recognized his talent, this tendency to mix jazz with country, along with absences due to asthma, got him fired often from radio stations during the 1940s. Restless by nature, Atkins moved to Cincinnati's WLW and then to Chicago's WLS National Barn Dance. He was there just a short time before country star and host Red Foley whisked him off for a stint at the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville. That same year, 1946, Atkins made his first recording, Guitar Blues, for Bullet Records. Atkins left Nashville again, this time for station KWTO in Springfield, Missouri, where Cy Simon nicknamed him Chet and promoted his artistry to record companies. The station eventually fired him, thinking his sound too polished for country music audiences, but Atkins was attracting fans. While in Cincinnati, he met Leona Pearl Johnson, a singer, who with her twin sister Lois performed on station WLW. Atkins and Leona married a year later, July 3, 1946, when Atkins was 22 years old. They would remain together for the next 50 years, until the guitarist's death in 2001. Impressed by Atkins's talent, RCA Victor recording executive Steve Scholl set off in search of the guitarist. He finally tracked him down in Colorado and offered him a contract. From his early RCA recording sessions came attention-getting numbers like Canned Heat, Bug Dance, and Mainstream Breakdown. Not confident without a career in recording, Atkins continued performing on radio and stage. The 1950s brought more exposure and a big career twist when the Carter family and Homer and Jethro invited Atkins back to the Opry stage. Country music publisher Fred Rose also befriended Atkins and involved him as a session player on some of the 50s top hits. He played with country music's great singer-songwriter Hank Williams on such big hits as Cold, Cold Heart and on Release Me for the First Lady of Country Music, Kitty Wells. After years of listening to different styles of music and experimenting with his own, Atkins helped pioneer the era of rock and roll, playing on early record recordings of Elvis Presley's Heartbreak Hotel and Wake Up Little Susie from the Everly Brothers. RCA's management decision to not only feature Atkins as a solo performer, but to use his talent as a session player proved lucrative for him and for the company. Recording executives noticed how Atkins's suggestions helped other performers succeed, and they put him in charge of recruiting new talent. He found and nurtured talents who became top-of-the-chart country singers, including Don Gibson, Waylon Jennings, Bobby Bare, and Dottie West. His own stardom increased with the release of 2 albums in 1951. His hit version of Mr. Sandman in 1955 showed his knack for interpreting music written by others. Atkins played a major role in popularizing country music by finding talent and producing hits for many names, including Don Gibson, Skeeter Davis, Jim Reeves, Roy Orbison, Charlie Pride, Jerry Reed, Eddie Arnold, and many others. RCA made Atkins a manager of their new Nashville recording studio that opened in 1957. As a producer with an eye for talent, Atkins succeeded in signing future stars, including singer-songwriter musicians Dolly Parton and Willie Nelson, who both became diversified entertainers with crossover record hits and starring movie roles. Just as Atkins continued to adapt his own style to changing trends, the country music industry now needed to do the same to compete with the popularity of rock and roll. During the 1960s, Atkins signed on singer-songwriter Bobby Bare and encouraged Bare's flair for recitation songs, which mixed singing and speaking. Results included Detroit City and 500 Miles Away from Home, both of which hit not only the top of country charts, but also pop music's top 10 lists. At the age of 49 in 1973, Atkins became the youngest artist ever inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. He had already performed at the White House for President Kennedy and the Newport Jazz Festival in the previous decade, and went on to perform in diverse fields when he played classical music with Arthur Fiedler and the Boston Pops Orchestra, and recorded with Paul McCartney. He played with legendary guitarists Les Paul and his lifetime idol Merle Travis, and with contemporary country music singer-guitarist Susie Bogus. Appropriately dubbed Mr. Guitar, the title of his 1960 album release, Atkins earned recognition as Country Music Association's Instrumentalist of the Year 9 times between 1967 and 1988, and as Cashbox Magazine's top guitarist many times throughout the 1960s and 1970s. In 1982, after more than 30 years with RCA, Atkins left the label and joined Columbia Records. He continued recording and releasing albums during the 1980s and 1990s, touring the United States, Africa, and Europe with his music. At age 72, Atkins started doing club dates, performing with bass, drums, and even a little singing. While managing to promote both country music and rock and roll, Atkins's own recordings, ranging across the musical spectrum, garnered 14 Grammy Awards. A street in Music Row in Nashville is named after him, and a downtown statue of Atkins with his guitar was erected in the year 2000. 20 years after being treated for colon cancer, Atkins underwent surgery in 1997 for a benign brain tumor and to repair damage caused by a stroke. He continued working, releasing an album of contemporary artists singing country classics the following year. However, complications from his cancer led to Atkins's death at his home in Nashville on June 30th, 2001. Atkins was buried at Harpeth Hill Cemetery in Nashville, leaving his wife Leona, daughter Merle, 2 grandchildren, and a sister. Rest in peace, Chet Atkins. Goodbye, legend.